what are your top 5 most used plugins? Now, this is a real easy one, but it does change monthly, I'd say. At the moment, as of, what are we in, December 2022, my top 5 are the Ampex ATR102 on UAD, FabFilter Pro Q3, the SSL 4KB channel strip, Soothe 2, and probably Spiff being my 5. So that's my 5 plugins that I use probably the most out of anything. This is obviously in the mixing stage. The Ampex ATR102, the reason that is used a lot is because I have that on every bus. That goes on every bus. Now, what that's basically, what I love to do with that is simulate that whole tape saturation. All the channels that are run into buses, they run into these tape simulation, and it does have a massive effect. Now, if you've got enough DSP power on your UAD chips, because it's not currently out on native yet, if you have enough power, what you can basically do is have that on every channel, every bus. You don't necessarily want it on every channel. Have it on every channel. Then once you finish the mix, just do this. Select all your channels, bypass every single one of the Ampex ATR102, and just go, whoa. Because when you just have it on the master, yeah, it does a little bit. It's like, yeah, that's nice. I like that. But when you do it across the whole bus, and you reference A to B with it on and with it off, it's massive. And it's a real good plugin. It's one plugin that has, I bought this maybe probably 12 years ago, maybe, and I've been using it ever since. And it's one UAD plugin that I use pretty much in every session, for the last, like, I'm talking for the last like 12 years since I bought it. Then what was the other ones? So then obviously you've got FabFilter Pro Q3. Now the great thing about FabFilter Pro Q3 is it's just an EQ that does everything. I mean, you can't, there's nothing that it can't do. And it's not, like, don't get me wrong, it's not the best EQ ever made. There's better plug-in EQs for you know, adding color, doing all that sort of stuff. But this is a surgical EQ. The fact that it has the FFT spectrum analyzer that you can visually see things with, that makes a massive difference. The dynamic EQ on it's brilliant. The fact that you've got mid-side, you can process the left, you can process the right, you can literally do everything with it. It's an all-in-one EQ, and that's why I will always have that as my EQ. For I have one at the start, I have one at the end. I actually tell a lie. The one at the start is the Kirchhoff EQ. I think that's how you pronounce it. Brilliant EQ. Basically, they're identical. Really, they're you know. The one thing with the Kirchhoff EQ, and that's on Plugin Alliance now, and the reason I have that at the start of the chain is because I have more options in terms of color, EQ slopes, and all that sort of stuff. So that one's seen as my kind of very precision EQ. Then my FabFilter Pro Q3 is my EQ at the end of my chain, where I do anything where I've got to remove anything, so any low end rumble that wants to be taken out. It's my kind of what I consider my finishing EQ. So then if we roll on to the SSL 4KB, now this is a very good channel strip. I've always loved the channel strip 2 that they had. I love the original one, channel strip, the original channel strip. And I've always loved the SSL channel strips, because the good thing about the SSL channel strips, I used to work on an SSL, so I know these. I know the SSL K series, and I know the 4K as well. I know these EQs, I know these compressors so well that when I jump into the box and use them in the box, they're very similar. I'll be honest with you, they're very similar. So when it comes to actually processing with these channel strips. I know them so well. I know everything that they do. I know how they react. Using them with the Avid S4 as well, you get the feel of working on a console again. So there is that, and I love them. I think they're brilliant. They're the great sound to them. The EQ's amazing. The compressor's amazing. It's my favorite channel strip at the moment. So that I use in every session. I will use that as my kind of channel strip. Spiff. Spiff. Now, the thing with Spiff is it's basically a transient designer, but it's better than a transient designer. It feels like it works better than a transient designer. So Spiff goes on every channel, regardless of whether it's a vocal, whether it's drums, whether it's an instrument, or whatever it is. It always goes on my buses, because I then have the ability, because the good thing about it is you can pull out the dynamics, or you can reduce the dynamics. So things like vocals, you might not want so much attack, so you just dial it back and it smooths things out. So things like that is really good for. Drums, on the other hand, crank it up, get them punching. It's a really flexible transient designer, and I don't even consider it is a transient designer, I guess, but I don't really consider it as too much of a transient designer. It's a kind of it's so intuitive. It's so kind of forward thinking in the way that it works. It really is. It's so worth looking at. And then it's kind of the other side of it is Soothe 2. Now Soothe 2's on the end. I have Soothe 2 on the end of every single bus. So every single piece of audio hits a bus and hits Soothe 2 at the very end. Now the reason for that is there's the thing with Soothe 2 is that what it basically does is it reduces the resonance in a sound. You can use it as a de-esser. You can use it on every single sound that you ever want to throw into it. It's not just for high frequencies, can be used for mid-range, low mids, whatever you want. It's brilliant, and it will just take out anything resonant, and it really does work. It's an incredible tool. Now, I always, up until about maybe 2 years ago, I always looked at these sorts of plugins as like, no, I will not go anywhere near them. It's this whole AI, it's doing it for you and all this sort of stuff, and it's changing. And I was like, no, it's not for me. If I want to remove resonance, I'll use an EQ and I'll do it properly and all this. That's all well and good. You can still do that. But with Soothe, you've got things like the best way to explain it is, I often have like sounds that are revolving, that a riser, for instance, that evolves. Now, if you've got if you're trying to get the resonance out and you're just putting like subtractive EQ in, that riser, for instance, it evolves in the frequency range. So where it's resonant here and you're putting these points here where you're taking out the resonance, as that frequency goes up, you've got to automate that up. The good thing about Soothe is it does all that for you. You can kind of go, right, there it is, it's catching all those resonant peaks, and then as it moves, Soothe moves with it. And it's so good. It really is amazing how it works. So I think I've done all 5 there. So they're my 5 plugins that I use in every single session.